Today I'm reviewing a tank that could have been a 2S38 on wheels. Instead, it's just a nice backup. It's the premium Rank 6 9.0 battle rating French light tank, the VBCI-2 MCT-30. It was added in the La Royale title update and cost 8,910 golden eagles, or roughly $60. There's a lot of ways that I could start talking about this tank, but the first thing that I want to talk about is how odd of a choice it is that Gaijin added this specific version of the VBCI to Warthunder. France never made that many versions of the VBCI in its 10-year production run from 2008 to 2018. It started out with the VCI, which was a more standard wheeled IFV that had a 25mm cannon. Then you had the command post version called the VPC that only had a 50 cal for defense. Then they made the VBCI-2, which was an upgraded version that came with a 40mm cannon and an optional add-on of ATGMs. That brings us to the version that we see in game now, the VBCI-2 MCT-30, which is a special version that Qatar put together, taking the hull of the VBCI-2 and the Protector MCT-30 turret from Kongsberg and merges the two together. You'll likely be seeing more of this specific turret because one of the variations of the United States Marine Corps' new amphibious combat vehicle also uses the MCT-30 turret. And since I'm talking about the turret, that's where I'll start talking about the in-game version of the tank. The MCT-30 is an unmanned turret, so it's packed full of features. In just the gunner's sight, you'll find an up to 15 times zoom, Gen 3 thermals, and IRST tracking. Moving on to the gun, it uses the Bushmaster 2 Mark 44 30mm cannon. It really teaches you how much 116mm actually is. That's how much pen you'll get from the APFSDS that the cannon fires, which realistically is going to be the only ammo that you use. From what I've heard, before this tank was released, a lot of people thought that 116mm of penetration wasn't going to do enough against enemy tanks. But let me tell you that 116mm is plenty to fight against most tanks at 9.0. Sure, you'll have a bit of trouble pinning enemy tanks from head on, but if you use the VBCI speed maneuverability, you can easily get around to the side of tanks. The biggest problem is what happens when your belt runs dry. You get 75 shells per belt, and you get 6 belts for a total of 450 rounds. One downside is that when you're switching from belt to belt, it's not instant like some other tanks. It takes 10 seconds to switch. For fire rate, you fire 200 rounds a minute, which is the exact same fire rate as the Bradley. The gun has exceedingly good elevation angles, going from 45 degrees down to -10 degrees. On some final notes about the turret, watch out. Since the turret is unmanned, they decided to shove a lot of ammo into it, and that can easily cook off if it's hit. Thankfully, enemies rarely seem to aim for it. I believe that this is also the first time that we've seen the Crows system in Warthunder. For those of you that don't know what Crows is, it's the remote controlled 50 cal that's on top of the tank. This final one is kind of a fun fact, but the stabilizer stops working when you start going faster than 50 miles per hour or 80 kilometers an hour, which happens surprisingly often. And that's a good segue to start talking about the rest of the VBCI. The engine can push this tank up to 60 miles per hour or 100 kilometers an hour. It's also located at the front, so it'll protect the crew when being shot at by IFVs or the like, but it'll just help create more spall when you're being shot at by something larger. Moving a little above the engine, I need to say some words about the upper front plate of the VBCI. Normally, the upper front plate of IFVs are inconsequential, but I've actually had it save me a few times here. It's only 12mm thick, but it's at a 72-degree angle and covers roughly 2/5 of the frontal silhouette of the tank. When you put the cannon's gun depression to work, that angle quickly goes up to 80 degrees or higher, which is an auto ricochet for most rounds in the game. It's not a complete lifesaver though. Even at extreme angles, the upper front plate has an effective thickness of only 280mm of armor. If you're able to look at the front of the VBCI and shoot at anything other than the upper front plate, you're likely to destroy the tank. If you hit the turret, you'll cook off the ammo and blow up the tank. If you shoot the right side, you'll hit the engine, which will spall and kill the crew in the back, and if you shoot the left side, you'll directly hit the driver and commander. Speaking of the sides of the VBCI are also only 12mm thick, but don't get overconfident. I haven't seen any machine guns be able to get through them. Looking at the tank from the side, the entire back half of the tank is empty, and I can't tell you how many times that saved me. For some final features of the hull of the VBCI, the tank's laser warning receivers are found around the edges of the hull. The tank is also amphibious, so don't worry about falling into the water. Now's the time that we come to the final ultimate question of the VBCI-2 MCT-30. Should you buy it? This question has a few different answers depending on some different factors. If you don't already own the other Rank 6 French premium tank, the AMMX-30 Super, then you should go buy that instead. It's a pack premium, so for roughly the same price, you're getting not only the tank, but also 2,000 Golden Eagles and 15 days of premium. Also, in my opinion, the AMMX-30 Super is just a better vehicle. If you do already own the AMMX-30 Super and are looking for a secondary vehicle, then I think that the VBCI-2 is a great pickup and it'll help you immensely with grinding through the French tech tree. There's also one final factor that would result in yet another answer, a sort of what-if scenario. With this VBCI-2 using the 30mm Bushmaster 2 Mark 44 cannon, it should have access to the Mark 310 programmable airburst tracer round. While not designed to be used against aircraft, combine that round with the Gen 3 thermals, 15x zoom, and IRST tracking that the VBCI already has, and you've got yourself a wheeled 2S38. If the VBCI were to ever receive the Mark 310 round, ignore everything that I've said so far. The VBCI would move up to being an insta-buy premium. But that's only a what-if scenario. It's not like Gaijin would ever actually do that. Or would they?